Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This podcast is brought to you by hituni.com. That's hituni.com. HitUni is an e-learning course provider specializing in high-intensity training for personal trainers and for people looking to learn how to apply the principles of HIIT to their own training for best results. It comes highly recommended by Body by Science author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, MedX Precision Fitness owner Blair Wilson, HIIT expert Drew Bay, and the founder of Living La Vida Low Carb, Jimmy Moore. It was founded by author and high-intensity training master personal trainer Simon Shawcross. Simon has 15 years experience and has supervised over 15,000 workouts. Due to a combination of demand and a lack of quality in certification programs in the fields of high-intensity training, Simon and his team spent the last 3 years developing top-quality courses that will educate fitness professionals and participants to enable them to train individuals and themselves in the safest manner and produce best results. HitUni has been put together using knowledge from the very best minds in the field of exercise, including Skylar Tanner, James Steele, Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, John Little, Mike Mensa, Arthur Jones, Dr. Ellington Darden, and many more. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace and convenience. The online video presentations are engaging and make learning fun. Online support and a discussion forum are provided to resolve any sticking points and enable you to share ideas and ask for help. Depending on whether you want to become a personal trainer, are already a personal trainer who wants to upskill, or if you're a keen HIIT participant that is eager to learn more about how you can apply HIIT to your own workouts for maximum benefit, there are several great value courses to choose from. I am personally partway through the PT course and I'm really enjoying it. I primarily wanted to do the course to learn more about how to apply HIIT to my own training for better results. The courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, hituni.com, pick your course and enter the coupon code CW10. Thanks very much for your support. Hello, welcome to Corporate Warrior. My name is Lawrence Neal and my job is to interview world-class health and fitness experts to identify the exercises, diet and lifestyle systems and protocols that stimulate the best results in terms of fat loss, fitness, muscle gain, performance, longevity, and productivity. Guests include high-intensity strength training experts like Dr. Doug McGuff, John Little, Drew Bay, and Skylar Tanner, biomechanics experts like Bill Day Simone, New York Times bestsellers like Ben Greenfield, exercise scientists, renowned personal trainers, and fitness entrepreneurs, adventure racers, and so on. Today, we have nomadic strength and conditioning legend Steve Maxwell, who's coming on for a second time. You can say hello to Steve on Twitter at Steve Maxwell SC. That's Steve Maxwell Sierra Charlie SC. Steve is a health and fitness coach and wandering nomad who carries all of his belongings in a modest backpack and travels the globe doing seminars and group workouts. He was named in the top 100 trainers by Men's Journal, was the first trainer to teach kettlebell classes in the US, and was the first American to earn a black belt from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend Relson Gracie. What's more, at 60-odd years, Steve is an absolute physical specimen. In this interview, Steve and I take on some interesting and you might say different topics, including how to breathe correctly during everyday life and through exercise, resistance exercise and high-intensity training, not surprisingly, the truth about radical celebrity physical transformations. So if you think Christian Bale, who went from super skinny in The Machinist to big and muscular in Batman, and Tom Hardy went from thin in Band of Brothers to very muscular in Warrior and The Dark Knight Rises. We go through Steve's minimalist and nomadic lifestyle and the essential items that he travels with and how he decides what gets packed and what doesn't. We also discuss what he attributes to the success of his business and how he manages to continue to replicate that success. and we talk about the power of the collective consciousness and how the importance in cultivating one's mental health is for optimizing health and physical performance. For all the show notes and links, as always, please head over to 15minutecorporatewarrior.com. That's numbers 15minutecorporatewarrior.com. And if that is too long to remember, please just search corpwarrior.com. So that's CORP warrior.com. So without further ado, please relax and enjoy this interview with Steve Maxwell. Cool. Okay, let's get started. So on London Real recently, which I watched your interview with Brian, which was great when you came back. And you were talking about the importance of breathing correctly.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you had any exercises that people could do to start breathing through the nose automatically, because, assuming they've breathed through their mouth most of their life, it's quite hard to then suddenly switch, as it's such a habitual thing. So I was wondering if you had any specific exercises that you recommend to people to start making that a habit.
Well, every baby is born inhaling through the nose and breathing into the diaphragm. And at some point in early childhood, this disappears. And my theory is that it's because of chair sitting. Sitting in a chair is a very unnatural position. The chair hasn't been around that long. I mean, people can probably chase chairs back to some of the earlier civilizations, but for the most part, the common people would squat or sit on the ground or on a mat or something. And the chair being such an unnatural position creates all sorts of tensions and stresses in the body. And it definitely diminishes the breathing. Also, at some point, and I've never been able to pinpoint this, but I have seen children as young as 6 years old already beginning to inhale through the mouth and use upper chest breathing. People have to understand how to use the diaphragm and use the lower lobes of the lungs as opposed to upper lobes. A lot of people just don't even realize the harm that they're doing by using the upper chest and so forth. A person can basically observe themselves in the mirror and just watch themselves just doing normal breathing. And if they're breathing properly, there should be no movement in the upper rib cage or the clavicles. It should remain completely motionless. Even if you take a deep breath, there should be no filling of the upper tank, so to speak. Everything's in the lower abdomen. So if a person were to put their hand on their navel and inhale, they should feel their belly pushing out just slightly. And when they exhale, they should feel the belly going in slightly. So that's the first step. You got to know what diaphragmatic breathing is and how to use the diaphragm. The next step is to pay particular attention to, are you inhaling through the mouth or the nose? One way you can ensure nasal inhales is to take a mouthful of water and hold it while you walk or sit to get yourself used to inhaling and exhaling through the nose. Later on, it's okay to vent through the mouth, to exhale through the mouth, especially during strenuous physical activity. But for the most part, it's good just to nasal inhale and nasal exhale both. And that can be easily accomplished just by holding a mouthful of water when you walk. And later, even when you train. I get a lot of my athletes doing that. Even guys on the jiu-jitsu mat, they train with a mouthful of water. Really? You can't inhale through the mouth. You're forced to inhale through the nose. And then you have to take a good look at it, like, okay, why are you inhaling through the mouth in the first place? It might be because you have a stuffy nose or your nose is continually clogged. Some people, may have a deviated septum. I had several broken noses in my athletic career, and I actually went to a certified rolfer, or ROLFING. It's a body realignment technique named after a PhD in biochemistry. Her name was Ida Rolf, and she was a genius. During the 1950s polio epidemic, her son was stricken and was totally twisted and crooked. And she took him to specialist after specialist. And I don't have much confidence in modern medicine or doctors, when it comes to health and well-being. They're pretty good at putting you together for, accidents and such, battlefield medicine and emergencies. But, man, they sure have nothing to offer when it comes to prevention and just maintenance of general health. So she found this to be true. The doctors had no solution for her. Out of frustration, she began to mold the boy with the limbs and develop these techniques, and found that the human body is quite malleable and can be molded and realigned. And there's a certain degree of permanency to it. And of course, you have to re-educate yourself as far as your movements too. You know, if you keep moving the same old way, you may just go out of alignment again. But at any rate, I went to a certified rolfer and had my nose realigned. The rolfer literally stuck the fingers up the nose, deep into my sinuses, and it was exquisitely painful. But when she pulled those fingers out, I was able to breathe beautifully. It was like, wow, this is so awesome. I can smell. My food tasted better. And this was all the result of having my nose broken 3 times in wrestling. Right. And so it was damaged. So I had a good excuse. But other people may have deviated septum. They may have food sensitivities. Some people, their diet is such that it creates mucus and inflammation of the mucous membrane because they're not either eating properly or combining their foods properly. So at any rate, if you use a sinus rinse, it's called the Indians use the neti pot, N-E-T-I, neti pot. You can take a warm saline rinse. Most pharmacies sell special little salt packets for this. In Germany, man, they have like all sorts of awesome things for rinsing the sinuses. I have a little squeezy bottle that I'm now using. I gave up on the neti pot, took a little bit too much space in my luggage. I have a little plastic squeezy bottle that I fill up with these little salt packets and shake it up. And water, warm to the skin. And then I just rinse the nasal passages out every morning and sometimes even in the evening. It's quite excellent for, just washing out any debris and keeping the sinuses open. And as we're speaking now, right, I'm walking about the room and I'm practicing diaphragmatic breathing and inhaling. And I often, when I walk, use this next technique. It's called I call it the Russian breathing ladder because it was taught to me by a Russian martial artist. It's called a breathing ladder. And the way the breathing ladder works is you match the inhale and exhales to the number of steps you take. Right. For example, you might start out very easy. You take a step and inhale, take a step, exhale. So that's called a 1-step inhale, 1-step exhale. And then I'll build up. I'll do that for 60 seconds. And then I'll do a 2-step inhale and a 2-step exhale. So inhaling 1, 2, exhaling 1, 2. And then I'll go to 3 and 4. And I spend a minute at each one. And, eventually I go as high as I possibly can without ever filling the upper chest, only diaphragmatic breathing. The volume of air is always the same. You don't take more in for higher steps. In other words, a 15-step inhale, exhale should look exactly like a 5-step inhale, exhale. There's no difference in my form, my structure, or anything. Same exact volume of air. It's just that I sip it in more slowly. So it develops tremendous breath control and good breathing habits. And it feels quite good. It's very relaxing. Very, very relaxing. What your readers and listeners have to understand is that when you're breathing into the upper chest, that's a signal to your body, to your whole system, that there's an emergency. Because the upper chest, those lobes of the lungs are emergency receptors, fight or flight. So you put yourself in this chronic stress state when you're always upper chest breathing, particularly mouth upper chest breathing. Your body doesn't know, your subconscious mind, your body doesn't know the difference between real stress and fake stress. That's, you talk to people all the time, that sit in the office and they say, oh my God, I'm so stressed, I'm so exhausted. And you wonder, how could that possibly be? They're just sitting on their ass all day, right? How can they be tired? I mean, they don't do anything. But it's, that upper chest breather puts them in the state of emergency and hypervigilance. They're being bombarded with these stress hormones that are being produced, right? Mm-hmm. Their body's actually perceiving everything as an emergency. And being in this chronic emergency state is absolutely, utterly exhausting. So you can teach your body to be calm, and you can learn to even stay calm in a real emergency. the people I learned this from, they refer to themselves as the Russian breath masters. And I went to the summit of the breath masters in Moscow a few years ago, and it was very interesting. They had Russian physicians there, and the translation was a little rough. Not a lot of people speak English in Russia.
All right.
And so sometimes it's a little hard to understand some of the concepts they were talking about because the translation was a little weak. But I got the gist.
Yeah.
That and the physicians there were claiming that many of the degenerative disease and in fact, they said most degenerative diseases have the root in poor breathing habits, and certainly premature aging, due to oxidative stress, can be created through this poor breathing habit. So first, you got to identify what kind of breather you are, and make sure that you start to pull the breath down in the lower lobes, diaphragmatic breathing. You can just kind of keep your hand in your tummy. So that was the first thing we talked about. The second thing is get those nasal passages open and aligned. Either go to a certified golfer or some type of alignment technique. You can even do it yourself, I suppose, by oiling the fingers with sesame oil and working them up into the nasal passages to open them up. Mm-hmm. Then you need to do daily rinses with your neti pot or some type of little sinus rinsing.
You do that every day yourself, do you?
Every single day, sometimes twice a day, especially when you travel and you're breathing, the canned air on the airplane,
Yeah.
And then you start to work with holding a mouthful of water so that you absolutely are forced to inhale through the nose, still taking care of pulling the air down in the tummy. And then if you want to build your lung capacity and lung efficiency, you start working with those walking, breathing ladders. And there's many different exercises, by the way, that you can do while walking. One is square breathing. It's an ancient yogic technique that's been around for thousands of years. You do a 4-step inhale, hold your breath for 4 steps, exhale over 4 steps, hold your breath for 4 steps. So out of every 16 steps you're inhaling, only 4. So it's very nice. Okay. It's so in and 4, hold for 4, out in 4, hold for 4. And that's called square breathing.
Awesome.
There's also oblong breathing, where, and this is actually much tougher than it sounds. You inhale for 5 steps, hold your breath for 10 steps, exhale 5 steps, hold your breath for 10 steps.
Right.
And then you reverse it. You inhale 10 steps, hold your breath for 5 steps, exhale 10 steps, hold your breath for 5 steps. And you don't make many of those. You start to build up a little oxygen debt there.
Yeah, I bet. That's awesome. Those are some really great tips for people who want to
one last thing I wanted to run by. Yeah, sure,
go for it.
And this is really important. The most dysfunctional and harmful of all breathing is involuntary breath holds. It's referred to as Valsalva sync. V-A-L, Valsalva. V-A-L-S-A-L-V-A. V-A-L-S-A-L-V-A. Valsalva sync. It was named after the Italian physiologist that first identified it. It's basically an involuntary breath hold. And it usually manifests like a grunt or a groan. Or sometimes women will hysterically laugh. And this happens during exercise. Let's say you're doing a set of pull-ups. This happened this weekend. And the girl was trying to pull herself up, and she couldn't, and she started making these really weird little girly sounds and started laughing. You see it all the time at the gym.
All right.
Any trainer with a salt should absolutely immediately stop any of his clients from doing this harmful type of breathing. It literally shaves years off the end of your life. It's terrible.
Is it the same as
any kind of screaming, grunting, groaning,
Yeah.
It's not healthy. You need to just breathe through that and learn to just, when you start to run into oxygen debt, just to rapidly breathe.
Yeah.
It's called burst breathing. And you pay off the oxygen debt by increasing respiration. You start to breathing faster and faster. Right. But I teach breathing workshops. And anyone that wants to host, just give me an email. I'll come and I'll show you these awesome breathing exercises, and of course, so much more than what we're able to cover just in this little article here.
Yeah, sure. I'm assuming you're also. Is it the same as a Valsalva maneuver, like when a power lifter does a big lift? Is that the same as what you're referring to? Yeah.
it's a little different in that if you do it voluntarily, it's okay. Like I was doing one-arm push-ups and pistols and things, and I was involuntarily creating tension and manipulating my breath, but I was doing it consciously and with thought. It's when you start to do it involuntarily and you go into this panic state. Some people call it the startle reflex, where people go into startle and you become over-adrenalized and you develop this whole cascade of negative hormones as a result of going into startle. That's why upper chest breathing in general and mouth breathing when you're training, you become over-adrenalized. You want to avoid producing too much adrenaline. You want to stay calm even when you're training and keep a calm face, no grimaces, no making faces, shutting the eyes, grunting, screaming,
Yeah.
However, occasionally, like for heavy efforts, inhaling and holding tension in an effort to stabilize your spine during heavy efforts, of course, that's good lifting technique. But a lot of people, as the muscles begin to play out, as the fatigue sets in, or maybe they're reaching momentary muscular failure, they'll just do all sorts of writhing and twisting and all sorts of crazy noises, and extremely harmful.
Yeah,
should be avoided.
Absolutely. You made me think about Doug McGuff's Stoic face that people comment on. When he's doing his Big Five workout, he's often got the really calm face and he's kind of force hyperventilating through the mouth. I was going to ask you,
by the way, that's not hyperventilating. He's developing such an oxygen debt that he's just paying off the oxygen debt. I taught the same thing this past weekend, and I did a set of very super slow chin-ups. I liked Drew Bay's Kratios. I don't know whether you know Drew.
Yeah. I know Drew. I've had him on the show, and I know the Kratos workout program. He's
I was showing the 1.5 rep chin up, and also the embedded static chins. But I performed a set of chin ups to absolute utter muscular failure, where my muscles were in paralysis. And at one point, I was really breathing quite hard, but it was very controlled. Nasal inhales, mouth exhale.
Okay.
Like I said, the yogis called it burst breathing or breath of fire, and it sounds kind of like panting. It's kind of like but believe me, I needed that oxygen. It wasn't hyperventilating, man. I was just trying to suck in air because my muscles were going into a very deep state of failure, and I was trying to demonstrate to everyone how you don't writhe, twist, yank, haw, kip, and start to scream and make faces and just all sorts of silly gyrations. And I just kept completely calm. And I had the whole group just looking at my face the whole time as a demonstration. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And a lot, that's one of the great things about the whole slow exercise movement. It really does teach how to stay calm, even in a very uncomfortable state.
I very much agree with that. So I was going to ask you just specifically on that. Obviously, a lot of people in high intensity training are taught to, especially when they get they're reaching momentary muscular failure. They're taught to breathe in short bursts like that very quickly, but not necessarily through the nose, so through the mouth. Would you recommend that people, when they're in that position, they breathe through the nose, in through the nose and out through the mouth?
I would.
In a controlled fashion, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's the anatomical way that people have been made to. I mean, that's what we're made to do. And I don't want to become any more adrenalized than I have to be. I mean, for sure, there's going to be some. You're definitely tapping into the survival mechanism when you go to momentary muscular failure like that. It is, it's quite stressful, and that you need to produce that stress if you want to produce any type of change in your muscles and your physical conditioning. But you don't need to make it extra stressful by adding in dysfunctional breathing. And so I'm trying to keep as calm as possible while working as hard as possible. And I'll tell you something, that transcends into other things too. It is a kind of a discipline. So even in an emergency situation, Or even in my sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I can stay calm even in a bad situation. I can breathe my way out of it sometimes. Sometimes I'll be caught in a really bad hold or in a really nasty situation. The guy's pretzelizing me a little bit, and I'll just stay calm and take a little breath and just gradually escape and work my way out of there without freaking out, Sometimes you freak out and you get caught in a finishing hold or get caught in a choke or something. You make it worse by thrashing. So, it can transcend. The Russians that I learned this stuff from, it was mostly special ops soldiers. And, they need to stay calm. They may have bullets whizzing around their heads, and they gotta remain calm even in the face of great danger. So the exercise technique actually transcends into just all sorts of things in your life. It's not just exercise per se. You learn how to stay calm even in dire emergencies, like real emergencies. Not like, working out is like an artificial emergency that you create so that your body can adapt. Yeah. I kind of look at workouts as tapping into the survival mechanism, so to speak, My body's perceiving the workout as a threat to its very survival, so it makes adaptations. So I can continue to live.
Yeah. I love that. And, even since we've been talking about breathing on this podcast, I'm actually really now conscious of breathing in through my nose. I think I've been aware of it for a while. I've heard you talk about it and others. And I've just, I guess for me personally, I've just kind of made the effort to kind of take more deep breaths through my nose and breathe in from the lower into the lower lobes, as you mentioned there.
One last thing. There is a myth called the myth of deep breathing.
Okay.
You actually become more oxygenated taking small little sips of air than you do.
Interesting.
The little notch underneath your nose there?
Yeah.
That little groove? That's anatomically put there. You're supposed to sip the air in close and not try to stuff it in from far out. You sip the air in slowly. And the little sips go right into that lower diaphragm. And you actually oxygenate better, get better oxygenation than if you try to take real deep, big breaths.
Interesting. Yeah, I can believe that. Makes sense. Switching gears slightly. I'm, as I'm sure a lot of people are, very fascinated with your luggage situation. And how I
never get tired of talking about it either. I know, isn't it crazy?
I love it.
It's just a bag, but I love. It's one of my favorite subjects: travel bags and.
Oh yeah, let's get into that. Yeah.
Travel kit. I've tried everything, by the way, just about.
Cool. Because myself and the listeners on this podcast love productivity, love efficiency. Hence why they got into high intensity training in the first place, because they wanted to stop working out every single day to the detriment of their body and start being a little bit smarter with it. So when it comes to your luggage and I guess packing tips, like what can you give us some kind of highlights on what are the things that you couldn't do without, the things that you carry around with you that kind of will always take priority over anything else? Because obviously you've always got to be so strict about what things you add to your luggage. Well,
when I first started out, I was a bit of a novice with full-time traveling, and I had decided that I was, I packed everything but the kitchen sink, really. And I had this great big giant, it must have been like 90-liter roller duffel. And I know, it was, now that I look back on it, it was so silly. But I just kept thinking I was going to need all this stuff. And it only took me one trip to London to quickly figure out that I'm never doing that again. I had to change trains 4 times to get to where I was going. And going in the tube there, going up and down stairs and going one corridor and getting on this train, I said, oh my God, this is horrible. And that very trip, I dumped that bag and got rid of half my stuff right there and bought a much smaller bag. And I realized that a roller bag is not your best bet when you travel as frequently as I do. A roller bag, and I travel a lot of interesting places. Try taking your roller bag up and down flights of stairs, because I use the rail system quite a bit. And I take a lot of boats and ships, too. It's kind of like a throwback. I love to take ferries and boats and trains as opposed to airplanes. And going up and down stairs is a real hassle with a roller bag. solar escalators. Changing trains is a real hassle. Any kind of dirt road, cobblestone road, if it's snowing, rolling a roller bag in the snow. So I started opting for a backpack, but I didn't want to look like some backpack kid, with an actual camping backpack, because I'm not going hiking, I'm going traveling. So I opted eventually, after trying a couple different bags, I started using the Tom Bin Aeronaut 45-liter bag.
Cool, yeah. Nice bags.
And it's a beautiful bag. Anyone that wants to check it out, I don't get paid any money. I'm not sponsored by that, but I just think it's one of the best out there. BIHN, Tom Bin. And the Aeronaut is one of the finest bags you could possibly use. The straps hide away, and everything I need, I can stick right in there.
Awesome.
And there's many different ways you can pack your stuff, but I prefer packing cubes. Whereas my girlfriend, who also travels with me and has also has Tom Bin bag, she likes the rolling technique. She likes to roll her stuff.
Right.
So she rolls her clothes up and puts in her bag, whereas I actually use little packing tubes. And I travel with a jiu-jitsu gi, which is the biggest item that I have, which can be problematic sometimes because gis are heavy.
Yeah.
A gi is about 2.2 pounds. And, of course, I have the gi belt, too. So I use one of the squeezy bags. It's it's not a vacuum bag, but I can roll it and squeeze all the air out of it through these one-way valves, so it compresses it. I guess the best way to describe it is it's a compression bag. They're made by various companies. The one I have is made by Eagle Creek. Fantastic for compressing that garment. So it's almost wafer thin in my bag. And so I usually travel with 2 pair of pants, with 1 pair of kind of outdoor hikey pants, 3 pair of shorts, 3 T-shirts, 1 sweater that rolls up. I bought it in London at this place called Rohan. It's a travel clothing company. Mm-hmm. It folds up in its own pocket. 1 rain jacket, pretty much, and about 3 pair of underwear, which I rinse nightly, and a couple pair of socks. And I wear shoes that are very minimal. The best shoe I found so far that looks like just a regular shoe, but I could also run in it, train in it, is made by a German company called Senmotic, Senmotic.
Cool.
It's a handcrafted leather shoe, all handmade in Germany, made out of real leather. Looks like a really sporty kind of shoe. Mm-hmm. And it has a zero drop sole, and very flexible. And I can skip rope in it, I can run in it, I can train it, but it looks like a normal shoe. It actually looks quite fashionable. And that's my base shoe. And then the other shoe I carry is a shoe called the Sole Runner, SOLE Runner, also a German shoe, which is very light, zero drop, very thin-soled shoe. So I can squeeze these things into my side pocket of my bag. And then I take a pair of Tarahumara running-style sandals that was made popular in the book Born to Run. It's basically the name of the sandal is called the Bedrock sandal. It was made by a couple of geologists, actually, that hike a lot. They wanted foot freedom. So even my sandals can be used to run, walk. If you want to take a look at them, Drew Bay wears an almost exactly identical one. He's wearing one, a Luna sandal by Barefoot Ted McDonald. It's virtually the same exact design and style as the one that Drew Bay wears, and a lot of the pictures on his website. But I find it fantastic for working out in hot weather. You can run in it, you can skip rope in it, you can do super slow pistols in it. I mean, very, very nice sandals. So all my stuff has to do double duty. I got to be able to work out in the same clothes I travel in. So I don't actually have training clothes. All my clothes are training clothes. That saves a lot of luggage. Like the pants I wear are made by a company called Kuhl, Kuhl. The U has like a double dot over it. And I wear a pair of the Renegade pants. They have like vents in the side. And they're kind of like a cargo pant, but they don't have those big dorky pockets in the side. And they have
Didn't realize you were so fashion conscious, Steve.
Pardon?
I didn't realize you were so fashion conscious.
Well, you have to be to an extent. When you only have just a couple clothes, you want them to look nice. So I can only carry just a couple pair of pants, so they got to be damn good pants. So when I look at a pair of pants, first of all, I got to be able to squat and move around in it, and I hate that grabbing feeling. Like when you lift your leg up and the material grabs at your thigh. So I can't do that. And I find that the stretch nylon is really the fantastic stuff. I'll give an example. Like on my last plane ride, the person beside me spilled a cup of coffee in my pants, if you can believe it. And I just took a wash rag and just wiped it off, and it was fine. I mean, the technical name for stretch nylon is polyamide. It's just unbelievable what they've done with this. It feels like cotton. It's stretchy because it has elastane in it.
Wow.
All my pants have to have a gusset. People that don't know what a gusset is a triangular strip of cloth in the crotch area that they have them in martial art. Every martial arts pants has a gusset. Most rock climbing pants do. At any rate, it gives you complete freedom to move your leg in every direction. You can lift your legs up, you can lunge, you can squat, and the pants don't grab. And for me, stretch nylon is the best material. And the cool pants are stylish and very tough. I mean, really strong. And they look like just normal pants, really. But yet I could go out and run in them. Or I could go, doing my training out in a park somewhere. I happen to favor one-legged squats. I'm quite strong in my legs, so I can do even super slow one-legged squats. And I can wear those pants, and they're just fine. I can wash them in the bathtub, shake them, hang them up. So I've done my homework and my investigation, and it came down to pretty much the Tom Ben aeronaut and then the stretch nylon type clothes. For T-shirts, I prefer the Under Armour T-shirts. They have these really nice nylon T-shirts that are very, very strong. And I like the ones that are the loose fit. Once again, I can take them and rinse them off in the sink or the bathtub and just hang them up, and they'll be dry by the next morning. And I've tried a lot of different T-shirts. North Face makes a pretty nice T-shirt, but I think the Under Armour T-shirt is the best I've found so far. The toughest that seems to wear the longest and so forth. So that's pretty much it. The only other thing, I do carry some emergency stuff. You never know.
Yeah.
I travel a lot of third world places sometimes, and I always have a drinking straw. You know what that is? A drinking straw?
I'm assuming it's you've got some water stored in a bag somewhere. Is that? Or?
Well, it's basically I could take this straw,
right, and
drink out of a filthy mud puddle and not get any diseases or anything. It's an emergency drinking tube. It's called Life Straw.
Oh, wow.
And I have one for myself and my girlfriend. So I forget how many gallons, but quite a few gallons of water you can get out of this thing. And it basically filters out any harmful microbes, bacteria,
oh, wow. That's so
harmful chemicals. So even in a life-threatening situation, let's say, like there's folks that maybe you read about in, Malaysia or whatever, where that tsunami hit, that terrible disaster, that tourist area.
Yeah. And
the wave hit, and there was no drinking water for days on end, and all the water was polluted. Well, with a drinking straw, you could drink pretty much out of a mud puddle, really, on the street and be fine. Still be able to hydrate yourself. I carry a fire starter, flint and steel.
Oh, wow.
I do carry cigarette lighters, but a lot of places do not. They'll confiscate the cigarette lighters at security. A lot of places don't allow you to carry them. So I always buy one wherever I'm at, but a lot of times I end up having to just get rid of it at security when I go through.
Yeah.
But I do have a flint and steel. Also a blade. A blade is a very important thing to have, something to cut, and you cannot travel like I do unless you check your baggage, and I try not to check. That's one reason why I like the Tom Ben. It's carry-on. I can fit it in all but the smallest type of airplane. So I have these little hidden blades. One blade is made by Spyderco. It's called the dog tag. It's about the size of a military ID or dog tag. And there's a little blade, and it's quite handy for everything from peeling an apple to, opening a package or cutting a piece of rope. And I also have a little key that opens, and it's not a key, it's a little knife, but it looks like a key on the when they X-ray it. So because you need to have a cutting tool of some type, And I carry a titanium spork. Man, that thing is so handy. And the fork part of the spork has a serrated edge, which is also pretty handy for cutting food and things like that.
Wow, cool.
So yeah, I'm ready for anything, man.
What sort of electrical gadgets do you carry around? Things like, I don't know, smartphones, tablets, anything like that?
Well, my electric toothbrush. Dental hygiene is really important. I have no medical insurance. I don't believe in Western medicine or doctors, and I haven't been to a doctor in 30 years, and I won't be to a doctor in 30 more years.
Wow.
So I take care of my own health, but dental hygiene is very important. So I do. That's one thing I do carry. It's not that bulky, but it's bulky enough. But the electric toothbrush, and I have the latest iPhone 6. Of course, they just came out with a new one, the bastards. I'm a bit of I like Apple products. I came along kind of late to the whole technical revolution thing. I didn't even have a cell phone until I was almost 50 years old. I think it was like 51. My wife fought with me for years about that. And I finally got one, just one of those little flip things. And once I actually got a real smartphone, it was like, wow, how could I ever live without this? My first one was a BlackBerry, and then I graduated to iPhone. And of course, the iPad has pretty much revolutionized my business. I used to do all my work on my old BlackBerry, and I was pretty good at pecking away at that little keyboard. But I can run my business of online personal training pretty much from my phone or my iPad. The only thing I really need in these places where I travel is good Wi-Fi. Even crappy Wi-Fi works, As long as I can get a signal at some point, I can answer and communicate with my clients online. So I call it my freedom business. But other than that, no other electronics.
Right.
Everything else is manual or whatever. I don't, and of course, a good charger kit and a good cord kit for fitting various outlets and things as I travel.
What are your thoughts on, there's a lot of controversy around carrying electrical devices on your person, radiation, these things that, cause some kind of as a stress to the body. What do you think about that? And what do you do to kind of mitigate that impact on yourself for your health?
I think it's probably overblown. I don't even think about it that much. Yeah, I think you can get really carried away with minutia sometimes. Yeah. I think our bodies are just so amazingly adaptable, and we have the liver and the kidneys and are so good at detoxing the body. We have all these. I think it's I just don't worry about it too much. I know some people that wear like little devices on their phone or whatever is supposed to limit electromagnetic energy and so forth, but I don't know. I just never worried about it too much. I don't watch TV. I always cover TVs with a big towel or whatever,
Right. What's that?
This is going to sound pretty weird, but I read this author, Stuart Wilde, that was saying that he was using the alternate universe theory.
Okay.
And he was saying that beings from other alternate universes can actually get into your energy fields through the television screen, even though it's blank.
Right. Okay.
I know it sounds completely bonkers, but I
was not expecting that.
Even if it's complete bullshit, why not put a towel over it and just be sure? It was a real interesting book. It was called The Quickening. Read it sometime. You'll start covering your TV after you read that
I don't know if I
book.
want to read it.
It's like one of this. It's like one of those scary books, that like a horror book. That's one of my little secret pleasures. I like scary movies, like all these movies about the zombie apocalypse and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The Walking Dead, Fear of the Walking Dead, this type of stuff. I love this stuff. The Strain, that's another one that's popular right now. It's really funny though, because the Pentagon in Washington actually practices for the zombie apocalypse. It's it's like it's an acronym that they use for preparing for any kind of national disasters, whatever. And they actually use they actually have protocols in place for a zombie apocalypse.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's not going to be like television, but it could be a serious virus.
Yeah.
I mean, there's countries right now working on biochemical warfare and biological warfare, and it's not inconceivable at all that a really serious illness could be unleashed on populations, and it could pretty much end civilization as we know it now. No one would be there to run the power plants and so forth, and so that would be kind of a version of the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I suppose. It's
civil unrest and people acting out and so forth.
Yeah. Charles, I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to ask you a few questions about your business, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Obviously you've got a pretty successful business that you run and manage as you travel around. What do you think are the kind of key things that you attribute to the success of your business?
Well, I had a pretty good reputation before I got started with this. I had been really well known in the Philadelphia area for many years. I had been on several local television shows, and I was even on a national broadcast of Good Morning America for a exercise class that I was doing. It was called Rambo Aerobics. This is back in the day. I was cashing in. I always try to. I was trying to stay current with like the themes, and that's when the Sylvester Stallone's John Rambo series is very, very popular. Yeah. And so I created an exercise class, like this hardcore exercise class, that because in those days that was very trendy, the group exercise classes, and the getting your name out there is very important. And then later, I was involved with the Dragon Door group, who made Pavel and kettlebells a household word there at one point. I was part of that whole movement. And so my name was out there. I also was published in a couple of national fitness publications and so forth. Mm-hmm. And when I finally decided to break free and sold my gym and take it to the road, so to speak, I already had like a following. So before someone develops a freedom business, in my field at least, you got to have a reputation and you got to be known. Social media certainly helps, and I certainly play to the social media. I use the Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter and all that kind of stuff, and so that's very important for getting the word out there too. Mm-hmm. And writing blogs, articles for other publications, doing as many interviews as you can. Mm-hmm. It's all very, very important. Otherwise, you're just not going to have enough followers. Mm-hmm. And I actually talked to a very well-known strength coach who does a lot of online stuff, Charles Staley. Perhaps you heard of him. He was the guy that came up with the concept of escalating density training, EDT.
Okay.
And at any rate, Charles told me that you need a minimum of about 10,000 followers before you can actually make a decent living.
Right. Because
you figure out of that 10,000, maybe even if only a tenth buys your products, that's still enough that's still not a bad payday,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just figure 1,000 people buy whatever you sell or whatever you put out. That's pretty good.
Absolutely.
And if you get like 20, 30, 40, 50,000, now you can make a fairly decent living. Especially, I mean, obviously you have to put out quality stuff. You can't put junk out there because a lot of people, they don't think about repeat business sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of the things they put out there is pretty atrocious. So I always try to put out good quality information, good quality products, so people will want to come back and buy in the future. So that's one way to go. You can sell videotapes and downloads and things off of your website. And then I started doing online coaching. A lot of people, they're dedicated and they have enough incentive to train on their own. They just don't know what to do, or they're confused. Or sometimes they just want someone to tell them what to do. They don't want to have to think about it.
Yeah.
And obviously, people that really don't have the incentive to push themselves or work very hard, they may just need a real physical personal trainer. But for people that have the incentive to go and train, the online personal training can be quite good. People just need a plan. I mean, with the muscle magazine industry and all this silly nonsense that's out there, it's very confusing. So much misinformation.
Definitely.
And I mean, all these magazines are all geared just to selling useless, worthless supplements and, the latest exercise fad. And, they do more harm than good. And people just get really confused and they just don't know what to do. So they need someone like myself that can help sort it out. I mean, I've been around for a while, and as I told you last time, I've been training for 53 years now.
That's crazy.
And I've tried a lot of different stuff. And I mean, there's no one way to do anything. There's many there's many right ways to do the same thing even.
Yeah.
And it all works more or less. But there's always that risk to benefit ratio that you have to take a hard look at,
Yeah.
I embrace the high intensity training model. I think it's the best fit for most people most of the time, especially if you're time crunched. But it's not the only model that works. There's plenty of people that do other styles of training that aren't necessarily under the high intensity umbrella, and it works quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone that says that volume training doesn't work is just kidding themselves. It works.
Yeah.
It's just that high intensity training gives you the biggest bang for the buck, but not everyone wants to do that. And some people want to do feats of strength, like the workout, the lifting of the weight is the end unto itself. They just really enjoy putting up heavy weights. So for them, the high intensity training model would not be the best way to go.
Yeah.
I was mentioning doing one-arm push-ups and pistols. They're show-off moves. There's no reason in the world to do a pistol or one-arm push-up. I could get all of the exercise benefit and strength I'd ever need from just doing regular dips and chins and push-ups and so forth. Even just regular body weight squats, I could make them high intensity enough that I wouldn't even need extra weight that much. However, people kind of expect you to be able to do stuff. If you're teaching this stuff, you want to be able to show off a little bit. So my show-off moves are one-arm push-ups and pistols.
Yeah, no,
I was even but there's no reason to do it other than it's the show-off move. It's like all these kids doing their urban gymnastics with the flags and the bar muscle-ups, and they're pretty cool. A lot of that stuff isn't sustainable, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys in 20 years from now are going to have some pretty fucked up shoulders and elbows. I've talked to some of them, and some of these 20-year-olds are already complaining about their joints hurting them. So, I don't expect to see them around. But I'll tell you, it is kind of fun doing that stuff. And it does give you a real sense of accomplishment, when you can do that. Or like the Strong First group, Pavel's new group, being able to press a really heavy kettlebell, that, there is a certain feeling of satisfaction. Or locking out a 2.5 time body weight deadlift.
Yeah.
I understand that. And I've been there myself. But, for me, I pretty much like the high intensity training model, but I do grease the groove a little bit with some show off moves,
No worries. No, we'll certainly talk about. I want to talk about exercise in a moment. I just wanted to ask though: have you had any difficult times during with your business? Maybe revenue took a real hit for a time. Has that happened? And how did you overcome that and bounce back? If that did occur.
In the past, when I had an actual gym, I went through that. But see, in my belief system, I believe in a limitless universe. You know, Einstein said that energy is neither created nor destroyed. All the energy that ever was and all the energy that ever will be is still here. It just takes different form. Money is energy. Money is a form of energy. It's fueled by thought. It's not like just the material, the dollar, but it's an actual energy thought form. And all the wealth that ever was or ever will be is still here. It just changes hands. And you got to figure out a way to have it come into your hands. And you do that through the universal law of attraction. And you do that with mental science. And the biggest enemy is fear. And if you're afraid, or you're a fraidy cat, or you're a worrywart, you're going to manifest the very things that you're fearful of and that you worry about. And I learned not to allow those things happen to me. So due to the universe, whatever thought you're putting out is the type of situation you're going to attract to yourself. So I learned a long time ago not to allow fears, doubts, and worries take over. And through the universal law of attraction, I always attract opulence and abundance, and I don't have to worry about my business taking a bad turn. And even in the worst of times, I still have money coming in.
That's great. Do you have specific business goals or overall goals that you're working towards?
Nope. I have no savings. I live, God is my insurance. Sounds a little bizarre to the worrywart, typical, person out there that has been taught that, to do all the things that Aunt Millie told him to do. I don't pay attention to Aunt Millie or Grandma. I realize that, it's an opulent world, and I can always, through the universal law of attraction, I will always have enough. And this isn't like some religious nut job stuff, I'm not thumping a Bible or a Quran or anything like that. This is just pure mental science. If you want to read about it, a good one to start with is just a very simple book called As a Man Thinketh.
Cool.
A very excellent little primer on on mental science and how the conscious and subconscious mind work, and also the collective consciousness. And if you want to get really deep into it, probably one of the best ones is called The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes.
Right.
And I've probably read 30 or 40 books on this subject, but it all basically boils down to you get out of life, and your exact situation is based on the sum total of all your positive and negative thinking. But it's a lot more than just positive thinking.
Right.
But that's the gist of it. If a person pretty much, whatever life situation they're in right now, has been created by their own thinking. Life is kind of almost like a dreamlike state, basically, if you don't like the dream you're in, you just dream a different dream. And it's very possible. Right.
Yeah, no, I like that. And everything you mentioned, by the way, books, resources and stuff, I'll definitely stick in the show notes for listeners. Now, that is some really good advice, Steve. I'm going to switch back to exercise. There's a few questions that listeners have submitted. I wanted to start by just talking about... Right, so first question is, in your opinion, what is the best way to progress with high-intensity training using primarily bodyweight exercises? So I'm assuming that person is primarily talking about gains in muscular size and strength. So how can one do that, progress, just through bodyweight exercises alone?
Well, for one thing, it all depends on a person's age and what kind of genetic potential they have in the first place. Mm-hmm. People have to understand that the muscle magazines have lied. Most people just really don't have that much genetic potential for big G-Wiz muscles. I always wanted to have big baseball biceps. Isn't going to happen. Not in this lifetime. So, a person has to have realistic expectations right from the get-go, and a lot of people don't. So, anything I say is based on the observation that most people genetically are not going to have large muscles. It's just not in the cards. Mm-hmm. There's only about 5% of the population that's ever going to have big muscles. So have realistic expectations at the start. But everyone can get much, much stronger, than they would be if they didn't train at all. And I manipulate leverage. I make sure that I work through the hardest ranges of motion. Once I can do a certain time under load in most exercises, Generally speaking, I like to get a time under load between 60 and 70 seconds for my upper body and up to 90 seconds for my lower body. And I vary the speed all the time. Sometimes I go 4-2-4. That means 4 seconds positive, a 2-second pause in the contracted position, a 4-second negative. But sometimes I'll do 5-5. Sometimes I do 10-10. Sometimes I actually do 60-60. Try that sometime. Okay. 60-second push-up.
Oh, yeah.
Up, 60 down. It was an old Ellington Darden, L. Darden routine back. It was like part of an arm routine. But, man, just doing a 60-60 push-up, 1 rep, 1 positive, 1 negative rep. Whew. But at any rate, to answer the question, the progressions are based on working through the most difficult range. So as soon as, an exercise starts to get kind of easy for me and I start getting like a really high time under load, I'll figure out a way to make it harder.
Right, okay.
But the problem with all bodyweight exercise, there's no clear cut. I'm always manipulating my own body weight, but there's no clear cut way to actually measure that.
Yeah.
You could just go for repetitions and say, well, I want to get 20 reps in the chin up. That was always like a goal for a lot of people. But the problem is, how are you doing those chin ups? Are you going faster? Are you kipping? Are you using momentum? You're using partial range of motion? So ultimately, it's pretty subjective, all this progression, Yeah. I do keep certain measures. Like, for example, I like to look in the mirror and look and see what my waist definition looks like. The standard for male proportions is always a minimum 10-inch chest-waist differential. There should be a 10-inch difference between your waist and your chest. That was, part of the ancient Greek statuary proportions and things like that. But with bodyweight training, it's kind of hard,
Yeah.
A lot of guys are just going for reps, but that becomes a trap and is also unsustainable because as you get older, you're not looking for progression. You're just looking to stop regression.
Yep.
So I'm at that stage of life now where I'm just trying to hold on to the strength I built. So I don't know whether that answered your question or not.
No, it did. No, absolutely did. It is difficult, though, as you said, and you've already mentioned Drew Bay's stuff, and obviously your own, which I'll link to help.
I would tell the guy to buy Project Kratios.
Yeah.
Drew has some really, really good parameters for progressions in bodyweight exercise that are non-gymnastic and non-feet oriented.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that book, Convict Conditioning.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of the title. I haven't read it, though.
That's complete bullshit, by the way. There's no secret U.S. prison system. The guy Paul Wade doesn't exist. He's not a real person.
Right.
The whole thing was just based on. But anyway, it's a progression of kind of pseudo gymnastic type exercises. But there is a progression from easier exercises to harder exercises, and for some people, they just need that.
Mm.
You just have to be careful. You just don't end up hurting yourself. But, going from 2-arm push-ups to 1-arm push-ups, that's certainly, one way you can measure progress, I suppose.
Yeah.
And going from regular, let's say, dips to the point where you could do L-seat dips, that takes quite a bit of upper body strength through the core and, your entire upper body by keeping your legs in the L-seat position. Or, working to the point where chin-ups become easy. You start doing L-seat chins or L-seat pull-ups or something like that. So, these, they're all ways of making progression. But, depending on the age of the guy that wrote that question, at some point, you're going to just be happy to be doing chins and pull-ups. and most people over 50 can't do any at all.
Absolutely.
I would say the majority probably can,
Yeah.
So... And it is quite shocking what's happening, with the obesity epidemic hitting all of the U.S. and Europe. Did you know that it's estimated now that 68% of the U.S. population
I heard you say
on
on London Real, it's absolutely appalling, isn't it? Yeah.
But you guys aren't far behind. I think the UK is the second fattest country in Europe right now. I think number 1's Hungary, number 2 is UK, and number 3 is Germany, I believe.
Yeah, shocking. It
is shocking.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. If one is doing a standard, this is another question from a listener. If one is doing a standard Big Five, like high intensity training protocol, and they're having trouble with sticking points with certain movements, Would you recommend doing more than one set per exercise, or make any other recommendations to try and overcome those sticking points? If that makes sense.
Would actually, no, I know what they're saying. These are all young guys. I can tell from these questions.
I don't know, actually. I think based on the pictures I've seen on Facebook, some of these guys are a bit older, so you might be surprised.
Yeah. I used to do time static contractions at the sticking point for time. That's a really good way to overcome sticking points in certain exercises. It's an old school way of training. You actually, wherever that point is where you're getting stuck, you actually just do a time static contraction for up to 60 to 90 seconds in that particular position, and do that for a couple of weeks. And it's really amazing how you will just get right through that position.
Right. You
can do a time static contraction in a power rack with a barbell, or you can load the machine in the particular position, and just if they want to, I would recommend Drew for also time static contractions. That's a really, really good way to overcome sticking points and so forth.
Right. Okay.
Cool. Sometimes also changing protocols, like change rep speed times, is a good thing to do too. Or just do a couple weeks of really heavy negatives.
Right.
One limb negatives possibly. If they're training by themselves, lift with two arms, lower with the left arm, and then do a different exercise, and then go back and lift with two arms and lower with the other arm. Negative accentuated training. I found that negatives and time static contractions are great ways to help get through sticking points in certain exercises.
Yeah, good stuff.
Another thing too, an old L dart. You just really lighten the weight. Just do really high reps for a while, and then go back. It's really weird how that works sometimes. Or you just back off about 20% and build back up. And sometimes you'll actually find that you get through that sticking point. You kind of like gain momentum into the gains. The other thing I found was a lot of these guys try to make too big of jumps when they train. Start getting fractional plates, little tiny, little weeny weights, no more than a pound, even a half pound. When I had my super slow gym, I used a lot of hammer strength equipment, and I had these little tiny discs that weighed literally a half pound, 8 ounces, and I would chink these little weights on there every workout or every other workout. And it's amazing how strong you can get with these very tiny fractional increases over time. Just absolutely amazing. And a lot of guys try to take these big jumps, and your workout gains come to a screeching halt when that happens. So fractional plates. So if the gym where they're training doesn't have those things, I would recommend that they just buy their own and just keep them in their gym locker or in their gym bag and use them. And I went to a place that sells bearings. They were the size of an Olympic bar, and they were just like little sleeves that I put on. They weren't even plate. They were just like these big washers that just fit on the end. You can buy these or make them yourself.
Cool. That was some really good advice on that. So another question here. What in your view, what are the best exercises for someone trying to recover from an injury to their rotator cuff?
For the rotator cuff, hanging.
Right.
Hanging from a high bar with a brachial grip. That's like a pull-up grip. Mm-hmm. There was I would highly recommend this book. It's I believe it's called Shoulder Pain, Its Cause and Its Solution. Or its prevention. It's something like that. It's shoulder. Dr. John Kirsch,
cool.
MD. He was an orthopedic surgeon who, basically surgeons will either drug you or cut you. That's all they can do. And he basically made his living performing surgery. But he started hanging people with the brachial hang, and he found that miraculously people were healing from everything, from rotator cuff, slap tears, which is a tear of the cartilage, the labrum, shoulder impingements, even osteoarthritis. People would be completely out of pain doing daily hangs in the brachial position. And he never found any shoulder ailment that didn't improve tremendously. And he has MRI after MRI and X-ray in that book. It's not real technical, but he now refuses to do shoulder surgery, and he will only have people hang. And he says it works better than the surgery. surgery has a lot of, built-in problems and so forth. So I've put many people, I have like many clients, and I've put literally dozens of people on shoulder hanging. Every one of them, to a man and a woman, has got back to me with no shoulder problems any longer. Even myself, I've had multiple injuries to my right shoulder in my jiu-jitsu days and college wrestling days. And I messed it up doing some other stupid exercises, not really using my head. And anyway, I developed an osteophyte, which is a big old bone spur, big calcium deposit there in the right shoulder, which really interferes with range of motion for overhead pressing and such.
Right.
And sometimes it bugs me a lot, but I'm telling you, when I hang on a regular basis, I am zero pain. Problem is, traveling like I do, it's not always easy to find a bar to hang off of. I mean, it's shockingly hard sometimes to find something to hang off of. You would think that every playground in every country should put pull-up bars for the kids,
For sure. John, I was thinking about you the other day. I was on the tube, and like a lot of the tubes have bars that are there to hold on to. I'm just going to ask you. I bet you do you hang when if you're on the tube system in London?
I do. And trains and even buses sometimes I'll hang. People look at me like I'm absolutely insane, but
I love that.
I tell you, I do. When I get the opportunity, I will hang, and it really works. And I recommend that book. It's a thin little book. You can buy it off Amazon for a few dollars, and it's a good read. And it's not real technical, but he goes into why it works. And then he prescribes a bunch of lame little dumbbell exercises, just doing like dumbbell lateral raises and front raises and such, for people.
Yeah. So you still there, Steve?
I don't know what happened there. It was weird. I could hear you plainly, but obviously I must have got cut out.
I'm not sure.
This Wi-Fi here is a little bit sketchy at times.
Oh, it's been great up until that point. No worries.
Yeah, it's weird. Bahrain is kind of like the playground for all the Saudis. The Saudi Arabian guys are just across this big causeway, this bridge.
Yeah.
And they all come over here to drink and womanize and watch movies. I mean, the movie, the weekend in the Middle East starts on Friday, like Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday. And then Sunday's just like their Monday, like their regular work day. And these guys are coming over and doing all the stuff they're not allowed to do in Saudi Arabia. And I heard upon good source that they're addicted to porn. And so when all the Saudi guys are in the hotel here with prostitutes and mistresses and drinking, and they're on all the porn sites, and it just completely clogs the internet up. It's really aggravating.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding, man. I mean, what a repressive society, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That gets people, living like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not quite right about that. Cool. Okay. So I can't remember where we got up to now, but there's a question I'm keen to ask you. There's a lot of controversy around diet and exercise protocol when it comes for what is the best ultimate regimen for stimulating hypertrophy. Look, every guy wants big muscles. You've obviously said, you said on this podcast and on the previous one, not every guy is going to have big muscles. It's just based on genetics, and in fact, it's quite unlikely that every guy that you'll be able to have big muscles. But what if you were to design, I suppose, in your opinion, a optimal diet and exercise regime that is going to produce the best results for someone? I suppose, emphasizing the aesthetic goals of them being able to produce as much lean muscle as possible. What kind of regimen do you typically advocate and recommend that people do in terms of training and diet, et cetera, et cetera?
It just depends on what kind of equipment a person has, and obviously their temperament. Also, body types. For example, I was always big on deadlifts and barbell squats back in the day, but not everyone's built to do deadlifts or barbell squats. So a lot of it has to do with the person's structure in the first place. Also, as a strength and conditioning coach, I have to look at not only the person's structure, but their movement pattern. If a person can't move well and they have poor structure, it makes no sense to load bad movement patterns and load up, a structure. I try to to straighten them out first. I'm really big at vestibular reset training and crawling patterns and so forth. I've had tremendous success getting people to do what I call baby training, kind of like retracing movement patterns. I had this one guy he got so fat that he got fired. He was an airline pilot, and he got fired by the airline company that he was working for because he was too fat to fit in the cockpit. Swear to God.
Jeez.
He was addicted to fast food. And this guy has had horrible movement patterns, horrible posture. I just got the guy rolling over like a baby and crawling, and then we eventually worked into Spider-Man crawls, like this cross-crawl movement. It completely reset his brain, reset his nervous system. He lost the big kyphotic hump in his back, and just now we're starting super slow push-ups, body weight rows, body weight squats. And the guy ended up losing like 50 pounds. And just getting him on just like a normal diet. What's normal? I mean, certainly not eating fast food and making the base of his diet fresh fruits and vegetables. But it doesn't have to be fancy. People get really caught up in this food thing, you know. The best diet's the one you can pretty much stick with, you know. I mean, you could argue all day about paleo versus Mediterranean versus vegan versus all meat, versus Arnold Ehret's diet healing system versus macrobiotics, and just go on and on. By the way, I've tried all those diets at some point. But I settled on the work of Dr. John Tilden, who was a turn-of-the-century American physician. And he was already seeing the danger of the big pharmaceutical companies taking over the medical industry. And he very successfully healed people through diet and fasting. And he created a diet. He believed that a lot of ailments, a lot of illness was the result of poor diet, poor dietary habits. That the majority of sickness is caused by poor digestion and poor assimilation. And why do people have poor digestion? Because they're overeating and or mixing too many foods in one meal.
Yeah.
So he was very big into simplified meals, combining food in a way that would facilitate digestion, and not overcrowded nutrition. And his book is called Toxemia Explained. Another good resource for your customers is the Soil and Health Library. Okay. And you can download Tilden's book, a PDF form for free off the Soil and Health Library. Really good. It's just a very practical, down-to-earth diet. Nothing's forbidden. It's just his dietary advice is just really solid. And I've been following Tilden for a while. And but in a nutshell, one meal is a fruit-based meal, another meal is a starch-based meal, and another meal is a protein and vegetable-based meal. So I'll separate it that way. And the main, and by the way, I've probably read over a dozen different food combining type diets, including the Gracie diet and Herbert Sheldon's diet. But the two food combining specialists were two American physicians, Dr. Hay and Dr. Tilden. And the main thing is don't eat starch and proteins in the same meal. Separate them. You'll find that your digestion will improve unbelievably. And how do you know whether you have bad digestion or whether you're not digesting your food properly? Well, if you have big stinky farts, if you're farting, that means you're suffering from fermentation and or putrefaction in the gut. And that means that these undigested food molecules, particularly protein molecules, are passing through the gut membrane and the bloodstream and creating all sorts of inflammation. And of course, what's the first thing that happens when you go to a doctor and you complain of like some type of inflammatory response? Oh, they put you on anti-inflammatories. They don't get to the root of why you're inflamed. They just suppress the healing process, which is an inflammation. But at any rate, if you're inflamed, if you suffer from anything that ends in an itis, you have poor digestion and poor assimilation, mostly protein problems. If you have pimples on your skin, you're not digesting your food. You're suffering from vicarious elimination of toxins through the skin. So if you're fat, obviously you're too much of a good thing. You're overfed. You need to be underfed for a while.
Yep.
These are ways that you can tell whether the diet's working for you. If you're waking up and you have plenty of energy in the morning, and you're in a good mood, and you can sustain your energy throughout the day, and you're not eating every 2 hours because you're just starving hungry all the time, I mean, obviously then your diet's working for you, and there's no need to change it. But I would say 90% of the people probably reading this, they can't lay claim to any of that. Oh, another big one. You shouldn't be sick. I can't even tell you the last time I was sick. But I know some people are sick every other month with cold and flus and so forth. If your immune system is impaired, it's because you're full of toxins. You're not digesting your food right. You're not assimilating it. You should never get sick. Or if you do, it should just be like a head cold or something, and you just fast and lay down for a day or two, and you won't be sick anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, the people I've put on this Tilden diet, some of my clients, some of them used to complain about being sick all the time. And some of these people haven't been sick for over a year that I started just recently. That's awesome. One guy from Dubai, he was complaining, oh my God, I used to be sick like every other month, it seems. Not even just every 6 to 8 weeks he would have a terrible cold. Now it's been a year that he hasn't had anything. So it works.
Okay. Cool. So you've spoken about, I guess, the fundamentals. So getting back on track, getting your body composition, your movement patterns, everything back on track using those basic principles of, like baby crawls and that kind of movement, mobility exercises, and then obviously the dietary stuff you just spoke about. But from someone who is training to build muscle mass, who wants to start.
Oh yeah, okay. I never did answer that question.
But you were getting there, I think, because it's important to talk about the fundamentals. Yeah.
Basic compound movements. I'll tell you, one of the finest lower body exercises ever invented was that Gary Jones hammer leg press. Man, I love that thing. What a great piece of equipment that was. It's hard to find a leg press with such great strength curve and so forth. But you need to be doing a major leg press or squat, definitely some type of hinging movement like a major deadlift. I prefer barbell. There are some deadlift machines, like leverage machines made. At the very minimums, like a 45-degree back extension, which is kind of a hinge. Mm-hmm. Certainly, chin-ups and dips are the primo upper body builders. Mike Mentzer was a huge proponent of chins, dips, deadlifts, and squats, and he's probably the most massive bodybuilder that ever lived. The only guy ever to beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. Guy was training like 20-minute workouts twice a week when Arnold was training every day, twice a day, and he beat Arnold in a head-to-head competition. So anyone that says that you can't get big and strong doing simple exercises a couple times a week, all you have to do is look at Mike and Ray Mentzer and even Casey Viator. But they were just doing basic compound movements. It doesn't have to be fancy. Any kind of rowing, bench press, weighted push-ups, weighted pull-ups or chin-ups. Dips are always one of my favorites. It's hard to beat the dip. Mike Mentzer referred to the dip as the upper body squat. It has the same kind of anabolic, metabolic effect in the upper body that squats would be for the lower body. And, once you build a certain degree of size, you can always add in some isolation movements, leg extensions or leg curls, some single leg calf raises, shrugs. I was always real big on neck work, by the way. I believe people should either do time static contraction neck, or if you have a hammer or old Nautilus 4-way neck machine, freaking great piece of equipment. But I guess people are always looking for that magic secret. There isn't any. Most people aren't going to get that big and muscular anyway. If you really want to see what the average man can build, you got to go back before, let's say the 1960s, even like the 1950s. Look at all the old strength and health magazines from 30s, 40s, 50s, and look at the physiques of the guys in those magazines. I'm not even talking about the Mr. Americas on the cover. I'm talking about the readers that send in pictures of themselves. That's what the average guy can look like, drug-free. Not like the skinned fitness models on the cover of Men's Health or Men's Fitness or whatever, what people don't understand is this guy's diet for like 6 to 8 weeks for those picture shoots, and they look like that exactly for about 2 hours. And then they use special lighting and special filtering on the camera lens, and then they use computer imaging and enhancement.
Absolutely.
And the guys are using performance-enhancing drugs, steroid light. Some of them aren't like hardcore steroid bodybuilders, but they're certainly using clenbuterol, which destroys your kidney and liver, but man, does it make you lean.
Right.
And they're using every kind of drug. So people have unrealistic idea of what they can build and what a human being should look like. To tell you the truth, if you really want to see the ideal male form, look at the ancient Greek statues. Go to like the Metropolitan Museum in New York City, or go to one of the museums in London or anywhere, or just go online and Google ancient Greek statue and look at. That's what was the standard of male beauty for 2,000 years or longer. So this whole concept of the superhero physique and the comic book physique, that's a really recent modern invention. And the only reason that came about was, the drugs. But it's unsustainable, unnatural, and unavailable to 99.9% of most people. They're never going to look like that. And, the sooner you come to the realization that is just not going to happen, the happier you'll be.
I think that's awesome advice. It was only last night, actually, I was chatting with, I went to one of these kind of paleo temporary restaurant events. And I met one of, just completely by chance, a corporate warrior listener, one of the listeners of the podcast, which was very, very sort of flattering. And we ended up, obviously having dinner and then chatting afterward. And he was talking about, I was asking him, so do you think that I know obviously all the bodybuilders are on some type of steroid or drug, but he was saying that if you look at all the actors, the guys who are getting really muscular and lean for roles for some of the movies. A lot of them are on the drugs as well. Do you agree with that? Do you think that they're?
Oh, absolutely.
They're all on it?
There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, Sylvester Stallone was actually arrested and forbidden to ever go back to Australia because he got caught at the border going through security with a suitcase full of performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. I mean, come on, Christian Bale.
Yeah, exactly.
You saw the way he looked in The Machinist, right? He had starved himself down.
Yeah.
And then just a few months later, he's playing Batman. Come on. Look, how long have you been training? You've been training for a long time, right?
Oh well, yeah, probably 7, 8 years.
Okay, and I've been training for like 53 years.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, and I trained hard, and I've done everything under the sun. And believe me, you don't get those results in a few months unless you're using a performance-enhancing drug. Mm-hmm. Not to mention he probably has, I think Christian Bale has really good genetics. And I'm not picking on him. I mean, hell, I actually admire the guy for being so dedicated to his art, Mm-hmm. But no one ever said it's healthy, And the other thing your readers have to understand that building big gee-whiz muscles, no one ever said that's healthy. You actually shorten your lifespan by doing that. If you look at animal husbandry and you look at your stud horse or your prize bull or your show dog, these dogs that win these shows, they have much, much shorter lifespans than a normal dog or cow or horse. They die much earlier. Right. There's a price of adaptation. When you adapt to building this huge muscle mass and bone, you are basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your kidney, your liver, your endocrine system, your heart muscle all suffers because there's only but so much resource to go around. So basically, even if you're capable of building a big gee whiz type physique,
drug free.
You're basically shortening your life. You're shortening your life. No one ever said it's healthy. Mm-hmm. Now, some people say, well, you know what? I'd rather live a short life of glory than just someone that just sits around and didn't ever do anything. And there isn't a good argument for that. It's just important that people understand the ramifications. There is a price for adaptation. and, lifting really big, massive weights and getting really big and muscular and strong, you do pay a price in that adaptation, and it is a shortened lifespan.
Right.
Mike Menzer is a good example, of a guy that he didn't last too long. Of course, he had a lot of substance abuse problems and things that certainly hastened his demise.
Right.
But, all the time you read about, these athletes just dropping dead. I think the average life expectancy of the NFL football player in America, that's our biggest, strongest, most elite group, is about 64, 65, I believe. Somewhere I read that.
Right.
But it makes sense.
Yeah. So is there like a kind of a threshold where, building muscle up to a certain point is healthy and sort of supports longevity, and then beyond a certain point, it's kind of doing a disservice to those things? Anytime
you get to extremes of anything, you're going to end up causing yourself some serious problems. Mm-hmm. Extremists in anything, it was shown recently, I forget where I read this, but it certainly made sense, that people that run competitively, of course, they're probably running with that dysfunctional breathing we were talking about earlier, but people that run competitively actually have shorter lifespans than people that are completely sedentary.
Yeah,
that's shocking. That. Yeah, but people that just jog and just kind of jog around slow outlive the sedentary people. So it seems like at some point you get a point of diminishing returns. How strong do you need to be before it starts to work against you? And as I always lifted because I was an athlete, I was always trying to improve my performance on the mat or on on the jiu-jitsu mat and so forth. So, I had a vested interest to stay strong and so forth. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about aesthetics for me. It was more about performance. But how strong do you need to be before you start to get that diminishing return on the playing field, on the soccer pitch, on the basketball court, on the tennis court or whatever?
Yeah.
And it seems to me that once you get to a certain point and a certain level of strength, getting stronger is going to take so much effort that it's taking away from your primary activity. Or in the case of health, it starts to diminish your health. So I guess there's no real answer to that. You got to answer that yourself. But there is a point of diminishing returns where getting stronger, where getting bigger isn't going to really help you health-wise, performance-wise, or anything else. Mm-hmm. So you have to just weigh the risk to benefit ratio of all this stuff.
Yeah,
I look at each exercise risk to benefit ratio as well. Also, I look at certain movement patterns and so forth. I look at the risk to benefit ratio. So
yeah. I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and I'm so naive. Yesterday evening when I was chatting with this guy, it was I was saying, you mean Tom Hardy was on the juice for the roles for Bane and for all the roles he's played? Because he's a really, when he was in Band of Brothers, he was a really skinny guy. And then he got really quite big and muscular for Warrior and for Bane, for Batman. And it just never occurred to me that that was steroids. But now it completely makes sense. This is just such
they get a doctor's prescription and, and it makes sense for an actor to do it, I suppose, because, they're making their living on their looks, and a lot of these female actresses too are really using performance-enhancing type drugs, diet drugs. The popular one is clenbuterol. It's like a form of steroid that really jacks up the metabolism, and you just burn fat like crazy. But it's pretty dangerous stuff, man. It's pretty toxic, and you can't stay on it for very long, but you will get ripped, man. But, like I said before, the price of adaptation, if just getting huge, large muscles, your body pays that price for that adaptation response, can shorten lifespan. Imagine now adding the stress of toxic drugs into the mix.
Absolutely.
And, some people don't care. They're willing to go out and like a shooting star. I always think of Bruce Lee, one of the greatest martial artists. He was just a young guy when he died in his 30s or whatever.
Yeah.
And if some people, like in my philosophy, death is not the end, and it's certainly not the worst thing that could ever happen to a person.
Yeah.
Death is just like one more. So for some people, it's no big deal. They'd rather really live and go out in a blaze of glory than, just playing it safe all the time. So, I mean, these are all questions that people just have to answer for themselves. There's no right or wrong answer,
Yeah.
No one can really tell you, but it's things that people don't think about, People just think about, I want to get yoked. I want to get, but they don't think of all that goes into that, and how it affects overall health, longevity, all that kind of stuff.
I think
a lot of young guys, they're pretty disappointed to find out that it's just really not in the cards for most people. You can certainly get bigger and stronger. I think Arthur Jones one time said the average person can pretty much triple their starting strength, and a few people can quadruple their strength, and a very, very small portion can quintuple their starting strength levels, but that's very few.
Interesting.
But the average person genetically can pretty much triple their starting strength levels at some point. And then that's about all the more you're ever going to. So you have to kind of go back to where you started and look at what you started with, and then just kind of figure out what the percent strength increase has been since you started. And that's pretty much it. You're not going to get much more.
Last time we spoke, you talked about when you tried a high-intensity strength training protocol, I think back in the day, you tried and you had 10 days rest between workouts. You said you actually lost muscle, and then you said that switching to 2 strength workouts per week and working just short of failure was more effective for you, and I believe that's kind of what you do now. Why do you think having 10 days rest between, obviously these were very intense workouts, caused you to regress?
Well, this is a common theme. You see it in a lot of the forums, like in Dr. Darden's forum. You hear guys talking about this. There's this guy, Richard Wynett, who has I think it's called the Ageless Athlete. He has the Master Trainer newsletter, and I believe his website, the Ageless Athlete. He's an older guy, and I guess he's pretty close to 70 now. And they talk about the same thing. For some reason, if you train, some people get really carried away with the intensity. They drive themselves into such exhausted state that by the time they adapt and come back to where they were before, it seems like they've lost a little hypertrophy somehow, or they just stay the same.
Yeah.
Or I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure anyone does, but I do know that the solution is if you do like another workout, maybe not quite as high intensity or even a sub-failure workout, it prevents that and even can get the hypertrophy going again. I don't understand the mechanism behind it, but I know Wynett mentioned the same thing. Yeah. He was doing like a maintenance workout in between the real intense ones. And I also think that once you pass a certain threshold with the intensity, that it really works against you. It's almost too much. I can remember training so hard, I literally couldn't get off the floor. I mean, I would be literally almost paralyzed and unable to move for a while. I remember Ken Hutchins talking about with the super slow. He had this one trainer that would train himself so hard that he would just actually have to sleep for a half an hour before he could get up from his workout just to even get moving again. Gosh. The guy was only doing like 3 or 4 exercises. So, it's possible to take intensity to the absolute utter extreme. But once again, in my experience, the more extreme as you are, and the more you take things to extremes, the greater the more diminishing the results. That you're better off staying a little bit more. I still believe that you have to have a certain threshold of intensity, no doubt. But man, in the old days they used to do like the forced reps and the negatives on top of that. It's just too much, man. By the time you recover from that, you've actually lost muscular size.
Yeah.
And I mean, the other extreme example of that is look at the guys in prison. Some of these guys that pretty much rep out on submaximal loads, a lot. Like maybe almost every day they're knocking out push-ups, and some of the beautiful ripped physiques that some of these guys have. Of course, you can always use. There's always going to be people that grow no matter what they do. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So the same guys, maybe they would do even better on a high intensity program. But the fact is that it did work.
Yep.
And they're not using much intensity at all. So, obviously intensity isn't the only factor in producing muscular growth. And once you past a certain threshold of intensity, you're going to get diminishing results. I find that going to positive failure is just about all you need. You don't need to stay there in the road with a time static contraction for a really, really long time. And you certainly don't need extra negatives. I mean, you can do that now and again, but you certainly don't want to do that for every exercise.
What do you think?
Every time?
What do you think what about just going to positive? What about like the body by science protocol where you go into failure and then you're inroading for 5 to 10 seconds? Do you feel like that is too much? Do you feel like that's adequate and that's okay?
That's probably a pretty effective dose.
Yep.
You know, I really do. I think that Doug's onto something there with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, he certainly has had a chance to see literally hundreds and hundreds of guys to come up with that protocol. So, you know, I would trust what he has to say because I know him to be a pretty sane person. You know.
Have you ever met?
I did. I used to be a member of the Super Slow Exercise Guild back in the day.
Yeah.
I got real interested in super slow. I was actually the first person to be actually certified in teaching super slow exercise. Yeah. And then I kind of got away from it for a while. I started playing around with, I started getting really interested in what did the mighty men of old do? How did wrestlers and judo players and jiu-jitsu players back in the old days, you know, before there was any of this stuff, how did some of these amazing guys train? You know, I started looking at, you know, like the Kushti wrestlers with the Hindu squats, Hindu push-ups, and, you know, the neck bridges and the maces and clubs. And, you know, then I got real interested in Russian kettlebells for a while. You know, things have been around for a really, really long time that didn't necessarily fall under high intensity, although with a little tweak, it could still fall under the umbrella of high intensity training, you know, brief and frequent training. That's basically the message of high intensity. Yeah. And so I experimented with those things, and I got, you know, varying degrees of results. But I did fuck my shoulder up with doing kettlebell snatches, so I warned people off those, you know, as an experiment. They were very intense, no doubt about that. But the momentum and so forth just wasn't the best thing. Oh. But you know, I kind of came back full circle. I experimented with that stuff, and it all works. It really does. Almost anything will give you some type of result. Some better, some worse. Some things certainly more dangerous than others, and so forth. But for my way of thinking now, especially that I travel, you know, the high intensity body weight training, pretty much like Drew Bay outlines with this Project Kretios. Although I do have a lot of my own little variations. And the time static contractions, I think, are just fantastic ways to train. Yeah. There's the time static contractions in particular really intrigue me. You know, I remember as a kid back in the '60s, isometrics were very, very popular, and I can remember getting good results even back then. But you know, it's one of those things that like you wonder why you ever stopped. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you about mindset, or I should say just kind of this, you know, in the psychological realm. And then just a couple questions I wanted to finish on. So I have a question again that's been submitted here, which is that do you think training increases our consciousness?
It can. It can cause, certainly increase your basic awareness. Consciousness is nothing more than being aware of what's going on and being aware of you know, motives and why you think the way you do, why you do the things. A lot of people are just on automatic, you know. That really funny show, that movie. I told you I like scary movies. Yeah. Do you remember Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah, great movie.
And do you remember when the zombie apocalypse hit and everyone changed into zombies? Yeah. And he went out to the local 7-Eleven or whatever to buy milk, and he couldn't tell the difference between the zombies and the way people normally were when they go to work. And he's not even aware that he's being surrounded by flesh-eating zombies because it just looks like people just going to work, you know, or, you know, like it was a really funny scene. And anyway, that's kind of like the sleeping masses. You know, people are just totally unconscious of, you know, they're just kind of drifting through life with no rhyme or thought or reason, or they're following a script. You know, the script goes something like this. I'm sure it's the same in the UK as it is in America, but you got to go to school and get your education because that's so important. And then you graduate and you go to university. And once you get your uni degree, you go out and you find that wonderful magic girl and you buy that beautiful little house and you get your dream job. And then you produce little rugrats, little kids, and you live happily ever after. And that's the script that most people have been giving in most modern, Western cultures.
Yep.
And it's complete bullshit for the most part. And it's a form of unconsciousness. They're just sleepwalking through life. And the training sometimes can actually sort of like awaken you to some of these things. You become really mindful. You start to understand like your body and the processes and so forth. And you start to look at the diet a little bit in an effort to improve those things. And over time, it can help increase conscious awareness. I've gone through like different forms of therapy and stuff. Like I mentioned the Rolfing, but there's another one called Feldenkrais, and it just brings this awareness.
How do you spell that one?
Feldenkrais. It was Moshe Feldenkrais was a
right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. It's a movement therapy, but you bring about an increase in awareness of your surroundings and your movement patterns, and it just makes you more consciously aware of everything in your surroundings, just based on becoming more in tune and more aware of just your body and how you move through space and how you relate to the environment. So yeah, for sure, the training can do that. But on the other hand, by increasing awareness and consciousness, you can also reverse it the other way, and become more in tune with your body. So, it's like the chicken and the egg, I find it kind of comes, people that practice mindful exercises like yoga and so forth, the Hatha yoga was designed to help bring awareness to the body and make people flexible enough so that they could sit in meditation and meditate on a higher truth and higher principle. And of course, a big part of the ancient yoga was the breath work. Just working breath work also brings an awareness and a conscious awareness to a lot of the things that you're doing. You just become very aware of breathing. And that's like one of the direct ways that we relate to our environment. Without, you can go a pretty long time without food. Most people probably could survive at least 30 days without any food. Yeah. And you probably survive, 3 or 4 days without any water at all. But without air, you're not going to survive more than a minute or two, a couple minutes. And so the breath is our main connection to the environment and what's going on. And when you bring awareness to the breath, you bring a mindfulness to everything that's going on.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I got a couple final questions for you. And then
sure.
I'm assuming you're, even though you just talked about fasting and you could probably go without food for days, but I'm assuming that noon is near and lunch is to be served.
Yeah, it's about 12:25 here now. So the buffet downstairs in full swing.
Cool.
By the way, I have my anti-buffet, my buffet control protocols in place. It's called the one plate rule. You fit whatever you can in one plate, and that's it. You don't go back for seconds.
I love it. Simple. Do you always follow that, or do you ever break it?
Every now and again, I'll get a little extra salad,
Oh, right. Okay.
But for the most part, I'm pretty careful.
Cool.
I'm very careful, actually. It's really easy to get carried away with this buffet sometimes. Especially, I'm staying at a 5-star hotel.
Oh, nice.
And it's the American dollar is very strong right now, and you'll find that some areas of the world, because of that, it's actually quite inexpensive. It's not much more expensive to stay in this 5-star hotel than it would be, let's say, a Best Western in the States.
Wow. Okay.
I know, it's weird, man.
Yeah.
It's the way the economies work sometimes. You find that, the British pound, or the American dollar, or the Aussie dollar, or the euro will just be strong or weak in some of these places that you go.
Yeah.
And, so sometimes like what would normally be a pretty fancy hotel, which I don't usually like that much, actually ends up being like a real, a real bargain, really.
Steve, if you had a huge billboard that you could place anywhere in the world and you could put whatever text you wanted on it, where would you put it and what would it say?
True. Be true to yourself. And I would probably put it right over London Bridge or San Francisco Golden Gate.
Right.
Or some place that's high traffic, famous place.
Interesting.
Stick it in Mecca. They just had that terrible tragedy where that crane collapsed and a lot of people died.
Right.
Being so close to Saudi Arabia right now, I'm kind of aware of like all the local news. The crane collapsed, and I think it killed almost up to 300 people that were doing the Hajj in Mecca right now.
Oh, that's shocking. No, I didn't know that. I don't, kind of probably similar to you, I really don't read any newspapers or follow much in the way of mass media. So quite often these terrible things are happening around me and I'm completely unaware. And sometimes it can be a bit awkward, especially when someone says, "Oh, didn't you know that?" And I'm like, "No, but I'm learning about it now because you're telling me." And that's how I get my a lot of my information.
Yeah, eventually you'll learn whatever you need to learn.
Yeah.
But for the most part, because I travel, I just kind of keep my eyes open and see what's being said. But I fully realize that the media is being manipulated.
Yep.
That what you're reading is not real. A lot of times it's half truths. Sometimes it's outright lies. And it's not even that the people mean to lie. It's just that they're fed lies by certain clandestine organizations and so forth that are controlling the scenes. So you can't really believe any of this stuff or take it too seriously. But it does kind of help to kind of give you an idea on trends. I usually just read the headlines and I don't read the article. I'll just read to kind of see like what's going on, the first 3 or 4 sentences, see what weather problems or natural disasters or whatever is going on, just to kind of give me a heads up. And then, sometimes it actually will even change my travel plans if I see, something that doesn't look too good in a certain part of the world. Like I'd be pretty loath to travel to the Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't go to Syria,
Yeah, well, indeed.
But you see what I mean? I'm using extreme examples, but
Yeah.
But there'd be certain parts of Turkey I won't want to go to, for sure, right now.
Right.
So it's a good idea just to kind of at least keep abreast of basic stuff that's going on there.
Yeah.
There's certain parts of California I won't want to go to. I mean, with the wildfires and all that, the polluted air and all that, that'd be miserable to go there right now.
Right. Okay.
I just had a client that just told me that he's having some serious lung problems from the wildfires out in the western part of the United States.
Really?
He's actually going for a vacation just to get away from the smog. He said the air quality has just been horrible right now. And a lot of people have been suffering from smoke-related stuff just from the wildfires that are raging all across the American Southwest and California. So little things like that, gives me a little heads up. Not that I, get too paranoid about a lot of this other political bullshit or the American presidential race or whatever. It ultimately doesn't matter who's going to get in there. My day-to-day living isn't going to change one bit.
Yeah. Where is it you're off to next?
I'm going to Berlin. I actually hired a young woman to be my publicist who's getting me some press in Germany. She has a lot of ins in the fitness industry there. She's quite a good trainer herself. And so we're trying to make some inroads. There's still some areas that I'm not real well known in, and we're just trying to change that a little bit, see if we can't get a little business and so forth.
Excellent. Cool. So does that obviously you mentioned about how weather and political events kind of affect travel and travel plans. Is it also kind of, I guess, aligned to where your next events are happening and where you can get, I guess, quite a bit of business, perhaps? Does that kind of dictate, how your kind of travel plans laid out?
Well, I usually get people to write into my website asking me about hosting an event or whatever. And then I run it by my astrologer. I use an astrologer who used to be a Stanford professor, physics professor. His name is Robert Tkach.
Cool.
And his website is starcenter.com, and he is unbelievably good. He gave up the academic life as a Stanford professor to start his own astrological business, and it's not silly nonsense. I mean, it's not like reading the horoscope in the paper. This is like in-depth stuff. Everyone I've ever sent to him just marvels at, like, wow, that they're just blown away. Anyway, he looks at what's going on with my energy. And it's like mathematics, like the Pythagoreans, everything has a mathematical formula or efficiency. And he can see that. And he can see the energy and what's going on and whether it's good or positive or negative for me to travel on certain days. And what's going on in the world.
Yeah. There's
just been recently, the last couple of days, a huge collective dip in the consciousness. There's been a lot of fear. Maybe you yourself have felt like low energy the last few days, perhaps maybe fearful or worried.
I have a little bit, actually.
Yeah. Well, my astrologer already predicted that for me. Right. He told me all about it and how to overcome it. Perhaps you had some bad dreams or weird nightmares. I certainly had weird dreams, man. Very strange, disturbing dreams. Right. But that's all part of the dip in the collective. And a lot of it's related to what's going on, like the Syrian refugee crisis, the drop in Wall Street, the devaluation of the Chinese currency. So people all flutter, all a titter, all worried. And when the collective consciousness, that energy, starts to dip, it can create problems for everyone.
God, that's fascinating.
One person's energy and thought affects the entire universe. Just like one drop in the ocean, it still affects it, just in ways that you don't know. So by being aware of these things, you can head stuff off. So I will look at the astrological aspects of going to the place. Sometimes I even get the birth data of my host to find out how his energy relates to mine, whether it's a good mix or not. And then I set the date, usually about 6 months out, sometimes longer.
Yeah.
And then I put up a page and try to talk about it on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, see if we can't get some signups. Yeah. And of course, I expect my host to drum up some local business. And if I don't get any signups, then I cancel the event. And what few people might have signed up, I'll refund their money.
Yeah.
If it looks like it's a go, we will go, but they could always change. I always, I can always cancel. If there would be some weird world event that would change things, then I would certainly, maybe alter my plans or postpone or whatever. But that almost never happens because I do look at the astrological aspects of the whole thing, and I could probably count on one hand in the last 10 years the number of times I've had to postpone or put off an event. Okay. There have been a couple ones that I didn't get sign-ups for whatever reason. Occasionally that happens. But yeah, that's how that works. And it works out really well.
If you could make one ask or request for the listeners, what would that be?
One ask?
Yeah, so either from, I guess, an advice point of view. So, if you people listening, how you'd want them to be, what you'd want them to take away, what would that be?
Do you mean from this conversation or from life? Or
from
or just a general advice for people?
I guess. That's a good one. I guess it would be not just from this conversation, just from your collective wisdom. What would be kind of the top tip that you'd like to give? You can make it, health and fitness, or more general than that.
Well, I mean, I actually had an ancient sage say this to me one time: chew your food, and all will be well. It was actually old Zen Buddhist koan. The disciple went to the master and said to him, "What is the fast path to enlightenment?" And the master said, "Chew your food. Chew it to liquid." Yeah. If you could do one thing to improve your health and your consciousness, is slow down when you take a bite of food and chew it to liquid and think about what you're putting into your body. It changes your whole outlook on everything. Now you're taking the simple act of feeding yourself and fueling yourself and building your cells, and you're actually consciously thinking about what it is you're doing instead of just cramming food down your pie hole.
Yeah.
And it really does alter your reality. And the other thing I would say is people should stop and meditate at least every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. It doesn't even have to be a sit down, lotus position. You can even do a walking or moving meditation, but at some point, just slow down and do some visualization, prayer, some affirmations or something. And I guess the third thing I would say, start thinking more about what it is you want and stop thinking about the things that you don't want. People spend so much time thinking about the things they don't want to have happen, and create all this worry. And they literally don't realize that they're actually creating the very scenario that they're afraid of. So just don't think about things that you don't want or imaging disasters. I can remember when I was younger, I would actually literally image a negative conversation with somebody about something. Maybe I was running late and I already started thinking of the excuses and the arguments I was going to have with the person when I showed up. And you just create the whole scenario,
Totally true.
or with my ex-wife or something, I was already thinking about how she was going to be all over me. And I was already deep into an imaginary conversation. It's crazy, right?
Yep.
So start putting 100% of your effort into visualizing what it is you want out of life,
Yeah.
and start to, and here's one for physique. I meant to say this earlier. These boys that are trying to work from the outside in, they're worried about their diet, their nutrition, and all this stuff. Start visualizing your body the way you want it to be. Actually, your every cell in your body is under the command of your mind. Your mind controls every single cell in your body, and all healing starts in the mind. Drugs don't heal people. When people get over cancer, it's not because of the chemotherapy. Chemotherapy actually kills more people than cancer does.
Yep.
It's never the drugs and medicine. It's that natural ability to heal. So same thing with muscle building. You can build muscle from the inside out. So what happens when you get into this process of visualization and seeing your body lean and muscular and well proportioned, maybe visualize a nice set of defined abdominals, your arms, chest, and shoulders looking very proportionate, and so forth. What you'll find is you start to do the right thing. Right. You automatically start to do right action as the result. And you're kind of led to do the right thing at the right time, at the right place, meet the right people, say the right things. And everyone's working from outside, but start to work more from inside.
Cool. That is awesome advice, and I'm going to start taking your advice more. Steve, thank you for being so generous of your time this morning. This has been
it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Now this has been, I've learned so much, and it's been very different to the typical interview I do. And I think that's a good thing because we really sort of broadened out the conversation. But just wanted to say, enjoy the rest of your time in Bahrain and continue doing the great work that you do. You never know, maybe you'll come back on Corporate Warrior at some point in the future. Yeah,
anytime. I'd be happy to come back. So
thank you, Steve.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the chance to be heard through your medium. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Take care. All the best.
Bye now.
Bye now. This podcast is brought to you by hituni.com. That's hituni.com. HitUni is an e-learning course provider specializing in high-intensity training for personal trainers and for people looking to learn how to apply the principles of HIT to their own training for best results. It comes highly recommended by Body by Science author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, MedX Precision Fitness owner Blair Wilson, HIT expert Drew Bay, and the founder of Living La Vida Low Carb, Jimmy Moore. It was founded by author and high-intensity training master personal trainer Simon Shawcross. Simon has 15 years experience and has supervised over 15,000 workouts. Due to a combination of demand and a lack of quality in certification programs in the fields of high-intensity training, Simon and his team spent the last 3 years developing top-quality courses that will educate fitness professionals and participants to enable them to train individuals and themselves in the safest manner and produce best results. Hit Uni has been put together using knowledge from the very best minds in the field of exercise, including Skylar Tanner, James Steele, Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, John Little, Mike Mensa, Arthur Jones, Dr. Ellington Darden, and many more. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace and convenience. The online video presentations are engaging and make learning fun. Online support and a discussion forum are provided to resolve any sticking points and enable you to share ideas and ask for help. Depending on whether you want to become a personal trainer, are already a personal trainer who wants to upskill, or if you're a keen HIIT participant that is eager to learn more about how you can apply HIIT to your own workouts for maximum benefit, there are several great value courses to choose from. I am personally partway through the PT course and I'm really enjoying it. I primarily wanted to do the course to learn more about how to apply HIIT to my own training for better results. The courses are really easy to follow and each section is organised into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, hituni.com, pick your course and enter the coupon code CW10. Thanks very much for your support.